Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm doing something I don't normally do. We're going to be responding to a video from another content creator, specifically Toboruo's video on the whole Arknights Endfield Dodge mechanic debacle and how you are the problem. Yes, Josh, you. I'm talking about you specifically. We're going to go through some of Toboruo's points, I'm going to bring some of my own to the table, and we'll see what happens. Because I believe he made some very poignant arguments in some places, but I also feel that he missed the mark in a few others. So, let's get into it. The main idea is that players that have played the alpha test of Arknights Endfield submitted a lot of feedback on its dodge mechanics or lack thereof, and how clunky and slow it was. Toboruo's video takes this idea and puts it into perspective, saying that this clunky and slow system was intended by the developers as part of their creative vision for the game and its core game loop. He draws a parallel to Elden Ring and how its stamina system was designed to serve as a limitation to the players to punish them for being reckless with their attacks and incentivize them to not spam dodges like absolute maniacs and come up with deliberate and strategic approaches to engaging the enemy. This is an argument I agree with. Not only does imposing player limitations impact how the player will interact with the game's world and characters, but it will also set up the game's flow as well as allow the player to feel like they've grown and improved not only by offering unlockable skills or mechanics that were previously unavailable to the player, but also by coming up with plans and strategies that play around these limitations and still gets them the victory. Player limitations are part of a game's challenge, and overcoming those limitations or achieving victory despite them is what makes a game fun and memorable. Now from here on out, I will let parts of the video roll as is so that Toboruo can make his case and I'll interject when necessary.
Recall how Elden Ring punishes the player for pressing buttons impulsively. Using the same resource both to deal and avoid damage, and animations being uncancelable, work together to set a deliberate pace. But Enfield's design contradicts itself. It wants you to be disciplined and intentional while simultaneously allowing you to just dodge at will. Notice how the resources for dealing and avoiding damage are separated. In order to get the resource for dealing damage, SP, you need to get a final strike. Doing so often means you will need to take damage. There is a good reason one of the main purposes of the factory is to produce healing items, and also that the main stat on every single piece of gear is defense, which in Endfield means final damage reduction. Meanwhile, your resource for avoiding damage is stamina. Dodging will consume 1 bar of stamina, and the game starts you off with 2, but once you've collected all the Aetherium, that increases to 6, and at that point you don't even need to think of it as a resource anymore because in practice you just never run out of stamina to dodge. Which consequently means players do not have any expectation of restraint with the dodge button, nor of being willing to take damage. And in addition to that, every single attack and skill animation will be cancelled by dodging. The sole exception is Gilberta's Gravity Well, which is the only battle skill in the game that is in effect over a fixed duration as opposed to a single instance of damage or an instantly applied buff. All of this combined tells us that Enfield's dodge exists in direct contradiction to the discipline and intentionality the game is trying to encourage. It may well be possible to adjust it to complement their intended design goal, but if you are a beta tester who looked at the feedback section, you will have seen that in reality, the vast majority of players were asking for the opposite. More iframes, more SP, more rewarding, and so on and so forth.
Alright, so the point of this argument is that the changes that were brought to the game, thanks to the feedback players submitted, goes against Enfield's design philosophy. SP is the resource needed to cast your skills, and you can only generate these with the final attack in your combo string. This means that you need to commit to completing the combo despite any attacks coming your way, but due to the new changes, you will be able to dodge out of any dangerous situation and avoid taking damage. This has the result of reducing the importance of a player's decision to commit. I understand the logic, but I also want to bring up my perspective as a player who actually thought that the addition of a dodge mechanic was good. First off, I want to fully disclose that I was not a beta player. My only experience with Arknights Endfield was at Gamescom 2024, where I had the chance to spend around 20 to 30 minutes trying out a demo for myself. I assume I don't have to tell you that 30 minutes is not enough time to get a good understanding of a game's inner workings, so from that experience, I came away with the same impression as many others did regarding the lack of a dodge mechanic. It's slow, it's clunky, and it forces me to disengage and run around to avoid the enemy's long attack animations. Overall, not something I enjoyed. So why do I still agree with Tobo's earlier points? It didn't take me long to realize that it was due to my own expectations about what Endfield was trying to be that I thought the lack of a dodge mechanic was the wrong decision. I've played a number of gacha games since the launch of Genshin Impact, and because of this, I've noticed a pattern in the action-oriented ones that made me come to a few specific conclusions. If I take damage, I made a mistake. I'm not supposed to take damage, that's what the dodge button is there for. If I need to use healing items to recover my HP, I made a mistake. I'm not supposed to use healing items, that's what the healer characters are there for. These ideas have been so deeply ingrained in me that I expect these to be part of every single gacha game that I play. And why wouldn't I? Considering that's the intended result. This is the same type of expectation as thinking the spacebar is going to be your jump button in any game. But I won't say I'm blameless here. It's also partly my fault because not only was I fully expecting Hypergriff to try to get a piece of that Genshin and Wuwa pie, but I wanted them to. I loved the world and character designs of the original Arknights, but I absolutely despise the tower defense gameplay and the chibi art style of the characters when you place them on the map. So I was hoping that they would create a new Arknights game that would go full 3D action combat and allow me to thoroughly enjoy myself. With these points in mind, I immediately rejected what Enfield's combat design was trying to do. I didn't think, okay, I'm going to need to commit to this attack so I can get SP. What I actually thought was, I'm not supposed to get hit, so why am I being punished for doing the correct thing? I didn't know all of the gear in Endfield had defense as the main stat. I fully expected it to follow the same pattern set by Genshin Impact with its artifact system or some variation thereof. This is not because I wanted the gear system to be this way, it's just what I've come to expect from these developers after seeing this abysmal gear system be implemented over and over again, much to my absolute disgust. I assumed that you'd be able to craft healing items with the base you'll build, but I expected it to be something that I will 100% ignore because that's what I've had bashed into my skull repeatedly in Genshin, HSR, and Wuwa, which is crafting doesn't matter because you don't need it. I don't need the food buffs or any type of healing items because I should be able to handle anything the game throws at me with just my own skill and the characters I decide to bring in my team. If I am put in a situation where I am forced to use a healing item in any of these games, then I as a player have failed somewhere. Now, having said all of this, I am thankful for Tobo's views on the matter, as it has brought some clarity on what Enfield's game design is supposed to be. Clarity that I, someone with no beta access, didn't have beforehand. Knowing what I know now, I am more willing to engage with Arknights' old system, even if that opportunity will never come due to the current changes. There's something to be said about how someone's expectations will impact how they view and interact with a game. For example, I recently tried out Uma Musume and I had none of these expectations because it was an entirely different game that looked nothing like the Big Four. Because of that, I didn't know what to expect and went in there with the desire to discover and learn, and not with the preconceived notion that I've already seen everything before and that I already know what to do. Hell, I even had fun with it.
The astute observers among you might have figured out where this is going, but bear with me here because remember, dodging is not the root cause of the issue. To take a very brief detour and give necessary context for an example I'm about to use, in November, Arknights tried an experimental co-op game mode. Unfortunately, it took place a couple of weeks after the release of Wishadel, who was given the most ridiculous kit Hypergriff have ever made. Fans of Wishadel were naturally going to be inclined to use their shiny new win button, and so most of my co-op games consisted of my teammates deploying her, killing everything in sight, leaving absolutely nothing for me to do but sit on my ass and wait for it to be over because leaving early would put me on a matchmaking cooldown. To put it in other words, I had no agency. My teammates' use of Wishadel was preventing me from taking any action, and it was absolutely fucking miserable. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. Ark is an operator who deals a fixed amount of physical damage to an allied unit in return for a hefty buff, but Wishadel doesn't have enough defense to tank it. So I brought him to every game and immediately team killed every Wishadel I came across so that I could actually enjoy playing the co-op mode together with my teammate. So numerous were my Ark team kills that I decided to have a bit of fun with it by writing a song.
I'm taking matters into my own hands. This is my villain Ark. If none of you will let me play the game, I'll keep deploying Ark behind your dear beloved waifu Wishadel before I cast durian-flavored Stimpack resolutely up her ass.
Okay, I gotta say, this guy is absolutely based and a bit mental for making a song about griefing his teammates by, taking away their waifus.
Plenty of people were delighted with my mischievous musical merriment, including some Wishadel users themselves, as opposed to the Arknights subreddit, which banned me for 4 entire months. But while I will freely admit that yes, I was being a little bit insensitive, there were some comments on both the video and the Reddit post which elucidated a common point of view among those who were offended by it. Nearly all of them said something along the lines of, what if I don't care about the event? What if I want to just get the rewards and be done with it? It didn't matter to them that this was a cooperative game mode, and no matter how clearly it was explained to them that their use of Wishadel was preventing me from using anyone, it just fell on deaf ears. They didn't even enjoy the game, they just wanted the rewards that came after it, with zero consideration of how their actions might affect their teammates' experience.
Before I touch on anything regarding the events, let me just say that I am 100% one of the players who would have used Wishadel and probably not cared about the event and just wanted the rewards, so my view on things as someone on the other side of this argument might provide some interesting insight. The experimental co-op game mode in question is Icebreaker Games, the first ever co-op game mode that didn't feature separated lanes for each player. Any previous co-op event only allowed you to take care of your own lane while sharing the same HP pool as your teammate. Not in Icebreaker Games though, as any player could place agents anywhere on the map, which led to the situation Tobo found himself in. I find this situation absolutely hilarious, but if it were me on the receiving end of that durian-flavored stim pack, I would probably not be in a very good mood! Because think about it. Arknights is a gacha game that has mostly focused on solo play. The co-op game modes until that moment only had you be responsible for your own lane and forbade you from interacting with your teammates. Now, if I were to come into this new game mode with a character that I may have paid ungodly amounts of money for, and I had my own teammates stab me in the back and remove the newest character that I wanted to play with from the map, then I'd probably be fuming. Yes, there is an argument to be made for taking away Tobo's agency and not allowing him to play because I am basically carrying his ass, but not all agencies are made equal. Allow me to explain. Me playing Wishadel is well within my right as a player, as I'm not going against the rules set by the game. In fact, if me playing Wishadel basically guarantees our win, then I am actively doing what the game mode requests of me, which is helping out my teammate get the win. He may very well not be getting the chance to play the game, but he will still win regardless. If Tobo brings out Ak and shoots my Wishadel, does that sound like teamwork? Is that action in spirit with what Icebreaker Games is trying to incentivize? I would say no, it does not. Not only that, I would also argue that even if you were my teammate, you do not get to dictate how I play the game, and I should not be able to dictate how you play the game. My placement of Wishadel, while it does rob you of your agency, was not made with the intent to stop you from playing. I was not trying to intentionally sabotage you. Meanwhile, as you yourself have stated, your use of Ak was your direct intention of telling your teammate, hey, stop using Wishadel because I can't play the game, use something else. Now, who exactly is in the wrong here? Me, who is helping my teammate win, albeit at the cost of their enjoyment, or Tobo, who is literally shooting my character in the back and could potentially cause us to fail the level? Okay, if I'm being honest, I'm assuming Tobo has a very good account and knows how to play the game well enough so that won't happen, but it doesn't really change the core issue here. My play might unintentionally limit your involvement, but your play intentionally disrupts mine. There's a difference in intent and execution. Regardless, it doesn't really matter who is right or wrong for the scope of this video. I just thought it would be a nice thought experiment. It's an interesting look into how co-op design and individual expectations clash in a game that's primarily been single player until now. There is also a case to be made for the people that are saying that they don't care about the events. When I hear event, I picture something meaningful, a spectacle, an experience. But in most gacha games, events are minigames or glorified chores. They rarely matter. Hoyo's endless parade of minigames are prime examples. I've learned not to get excited. Events have become barriers between me and my daily login grind. And that's not just a design flaw, it's a structural issue with gacha games in general. I'll touch on that more soon.
Now think about some of the complaints from the beta for a moment. Remember all those seemingly random requests for open world mechanics like wall climbing and grappling hooks and stuff? They must be aware that a major part of the game is relaying power and building your own zip lines, right? The inspiration from Death Stranding should be pretty obvious. You get to choose where the ziplines go, but you have to set them up yourself. You can't just have them without building them. But all those requests for random open world shit exist because whether you realize it or not, you're asking for exactly that. You want what the ziplines provide without the responsibility of building them yourself. Importing mechanics like grappling hooks and wall running and flying or whatever simply wouldn't work. The game is fundamentally not designed like that. It would completely trivialize every single terrain obstacle, and you'd then be left wondering why the world feels so much smaller. Because that constraint is not an oversight or a shortcoming, it is deliberate. Looking back to those earlier complaints from the beta about SP and dodging, if you're performing final strikes, getting SP is very simple, or you can just use Arklight to make it easier. But the player is insisting on dodging even when the game is punishing them for doing so carelessly. And instead of making that connection and deciding not to dodge, they are just asking for more SP and easier dodges. You may have noticed a pattern here. At first, the root of the problem appears to be that gacha players do not want their actions to matter. Except, that's not actually the full picture. Plenty of gacha gamers are perfectly willing to accept those design goals in other games. It's not as if they're all just unteachable and refuse to take responsibility for their actions in every part of life. But it seems to be near universal when they're playing gacha games. And that is where the real root of the problem lies. Gacha gamers have been taught their actions won't matter, and therefore, gacha gamers have come to expect their actions will not matter.
Tobo says it perfectly, and I will argue that yes, of course we've come to expect that our actions don't matter, but not necessarily for the reasons he mentions in his video, even though I agree that some of those are valid reasons regardless. Yes, expectations do impact how you will interact with a game, but I don't necessarily think it's the player's fault in noticing the pattern with recently released gacha games and how most of them draw inspiration from the templates set by Genshin Impact. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that Hypergriff wanted to develop a Genshin clone with an Arknights skin to cash in on the trend, because we've already seen it happen with recently released titles. And if this template has taught us that our actions won't matter, why would we expect anything different from any other game that draws inspiration from the same template?
The complaints from beta testers all stem from this root cause. Dodging when it's a bad move led to consequences, but your expectations are that dodging is never the wrong move. Pulling impulsively is always a bad decision, but because the rate of guarantee carries over in MiHoYo games, your expectations are that doing so doesn't usually make a difference.
I agree with his point on dodging here, but not the one about pulling impulsively. I wish he went into a bit more detail here because I have a feeling he wanted to convey something here that made sense in his head, but didn't put it into words well enough for everyone else. I don't believe having pity carry over can ever be a bad feature to have, nor do I think the lack of a pity carryover can provide the player with some sort of enhanced experience or challenge.
Setting up your own ziplines is a major part of the game, and not setting them up means you'll be walking everywhere, but your expectations are that of already having a plethora of locations to teleport to and of being able to fly around at will.
This is one expectation that I didn't have, surprisingly, probably because I've already played games like Satisfactory which focus around base building and optimization. Maybe that's why I was more excited to see this in Endfield compared to other players.
Arknights' Enfield's dodge button currently means deciding whether or not to dodge matters, but we saw earlier that players do not have any expectation of restraint because the stamina basically never runs out and the dodge lacks commitment. The commitment in the example of Elden Ring means you're punished for acting carelessly, and Elden Ring is known for that. Discipline is expected. Gacha games, on the other hand, are the opposite. They are known for having very few consequences. So when they introduce a consequence to something players aren't used to facing consequences for, it subverts their expectations of the game. The problem with gacha gamers is not a problem of commitment. The problem is that instead of reevaluating what their expectations are, they simply ask for the game to better match their expectations by removing those consequences.
I will say again, I did not play Endfield enough, so maybe I'm misunderstanding how the game actually works, but I would say it's pretty universal across gaming that getting hit is not a good idea, so when I played Endfield at Gamescom, my first instinct was to avoid damage as much as possible. There wasn't a point where the game communicated that it expects me to get hit and regularly use healing items in combat. As a result, I tried to either stun an enemy or completely disengage to avoid getting hit, and that did not provide me with a fun experience. At that moment in time, it felt like the game was asking me to not get hit but refused to give me the basic tools required for me to achieve that. I would also argue that a lengthy cooldown on healing items actually does the opposite of communicating to the player that they should commit to the combo and take the damage.
With Elden Ring, we saw that restraints on your agency create risk and reward, but when my co-op teammate prevented me from contributing, we saw that zero agency just creates frustration. The problem with the technical test was not the lack of a dodge, the problem was the lack of any agency in reacting to those attacks. Dodging is not the only solution to that lack of agency, but it is a popular one, which is why there were so many calls to implement it. But now with the beta, the problem is that dodging exists in contradiction to the discipline and intent they want to encourage. There are various solutions you could try to make the dodge actually complement the combat system, like basic attacks slowly reducing your stamina and only recharging it once you stop attacking, but that wouldn't solve the issue because dodging would still interrupt your basic attack sequence, so you'd still need to take damage to get SP, so gacha players would still complain. And if dodging didn't reset the sequence, combat would simply be reduced to a matter of optimizing animation cancels and memorizing optimal rotations, and the game's identity is compromised.
I agree that player expectations most likely created this wide request for an improved dodge mechanic, but I also believe that it was the game's responsibility to communicate to the player that getting hit is a necessary part of the process.
The call to remove the dodge is not a call to bring back the guaranteed attack to the technical test, it is a call to change what that agency looks like. It doesn't need to be a reflexive dodge or parry button. Removing the dodge is an immediate way to force the player to reevaluate their expectations from the very start. Because if the controls and inputs do not let you dodge impulsively, then you have to reconsider how you're going to mitigate damage, which forces you to appropriately adjust your expectations of the game.
As far as I know, you can't mitigate damage. I didn't have the chance to play the game for long, so maybe there are characters that help with applying shields and other mitigation tools, but I didn't get to test that out.
That response video from Billy I mentioned at the start of the video makes a very good point related to this problem of expectations.
在我看来啊，相比于优化闪避的呼声，要求蓝图的声音可能还要更大。这些人可不会在要求蓝图的言论中拿那几个游戏给自己套盾。抄作业比起亲力亲为的闪避，才是最快捷、迅速删除掉一个玩法乐趣的东西吧？那为什么有那么多人对蓝图抄作业有需求？就是因为许多人他就是抱着吃快餐的心态去玩 gacha 的。
He's absolutely right in saying that blueprints would be an atrocious idea, and if they'd been present in the beta, the Death Knell video would be sunshine and rainbows compared to the Doom posting I'd be doing in that timeline. But what I think his point of view misses is the fact that with Arknights, Hypergriff have been consistently reluctant to add any features that could be considered as the game playing itself or making decisions for you. It has never once had an autoplay button. You have to choose where to deploy your operators and when to activate their skills yourself, and only then do you get to auto-deploy. Likewise, in Endfield, their way of addressing the complaints about the factory was not to add blueprints, but instead to add loads of tutorials and a more intuitive top-down interface. The core design philosophy of do-it-yourself remains just as clear, which is why I don't think pre-made blueprints will be added anytime soon, let alone the ability to copy them from other players. But nonetheless, he is right. Those demands for blueprints will grow louder and louder because gacha players only want to eat fast food, the meal without the responsibility of cooking it. And to build on the analogy further, fast food might be convenient and tasty, but if you grow accustomed to it, serious health implications aside, cooking your own food will start to feel like a chore.
I agree with this fully, but what Tobo is missing here is the core reason behind why gacha players want to eat fast food. It's not an innate desire, it's a response to how gacha games work at their core. Continuing the cooking analogy, gacha games don't give you the time to cook your own meals. They constantly pressure you to keep up to date, log in every day, do your dailies quickly so you don't overcap on stamina, and get all of your daily rewards so you have enough currency to pull the next big booba waifu. It's like having Gordon Ramsay screaming in your ear to move faster. Gacha games incentivize you to go fast and actively punish you if you dare to take your time or, God forbid, put the game down for a couple of weeks. Of course, gacha players are going to prefer fast food because gacha games will punch you in the face if you dare eat anything else. I bet money that there are people watching this or Tobo's video that have caught themselves thinking at one point that they don't want to deal with a new version update story content because it's an obstacle to the routine they've grown accustomed to. Because you're logging in daily, your interest and desire to play the game slowly erodes over time, replaced only by this feeling that you need to just maintain your account because if you don't, you'll be left behind. Why does this happen? Because gacha games don't allow you to take breaks by design. Because every single day that you don't play is lost progress that you can never recover. You only have a certain amount of stamina each day after all. It's no wonder people want to rush through new content. Not because they don't care, but because the system punishes them if they don't. The longer you play, the more this constant upkeep erodes your enthusiasm until everything feels like a chore. And I don't want to see any of you in the comments trying to tell me that I'm wrong about this because I have real life examples of these kinds of people every single day. They are my friends. This also applies to the idea that gacha gamers have come to expect that their actions won't matter. Well, do you blame them for doing so? Gacha games aren't really known for offering players a wide variety of options in how they engage with the content. What do you see when you look at the endgame of the Big Four? What do they have in common? They're all timed game modes which incentivize players to treat those encounters as a DPS race. You could be the most skilled player in existence, pull off some imaginative combos, never once get hit, and yet you still wouldn't be able to fully clear if you don't reach certain stat thresholds on your gear. All of these endgame modes are stat checks more than they are skill checks. And what's the main use of stamina? To farm gear and materials to level up your character's stats. But wait, because every single character has their own specialized gear set that you need to equip on them. Any other gear sets, while they might still be usable, are still downgrades. And due to the random nature of these gearing systems, you could end up using your stamina and still not get any pieces with the main stat that you need. Or in Wuwa's case, you get the main stat you need, but with none of the good substats. So when the game tells me that I'm damned if I play and damned if I don't, when it tells me that there are specific checkboxes I must tick to build a character and any other weapon or gear combination will be a downgrade instead of a side grade, when the endgame tells me it doesn't matter how skilled I am with playing a character, it just matters if I have enough stats to clear the fight in time, why wouldn't I come to the conclusion that my actions don't matter? I currently play Wuwa, HSR, and ZZZ. You want to know the one thing I do in all three of these games? I don't bother reading what any of the characters do, because I never need to. Because the game never tests my knowledge or skill, it only tests my stats. Sure, I look into what their stat requirements are, I level up their skills, get them the gear that they need, but I never once stop to read the description of the skills these characters have, because it never matters. I'd argue that there's more skill required in Wua's Tactical Hologram and ZZZ's Endless Tower game mode than in their respective endgames, but not by much. That's also probably why those game modes don't see regular refreshes to their rewards. So yes, gacha players want to eat fast food because that's what gacha games are and that's what they've trained us to do. By making the player log in every single day instead of allowing players to engage on their own terms, they are slowly turning their own game activities into chores for the player.
Hypergriff have said they consider the infrastructure and automation to be the focus of the game, explicitly citing games like Factorio and Dyson Sphere Program as successful examples. But those games have an innate filter in having an upfront cost.
These games also allow the player to play it as much as they want and guarantee that the time they spend in there will net them progress equal to the effort they put in. And with no time constraints, players can actually take it slow and enjoy their experience.
Free-to-play gacha games do not have that barrier to entry, and they are surrounded by this bizarre culture of people playing multiple games they may not even like playing, while simultaneously demanding those games make it easier for them to maintain their account.
Because the games themselves incentivize this playstyle. This constant upkeep these gacha games ask of you will erode the love and enjoyment a player had when starting the game.
In my years of playing Arknights, I have seen what Hypergriff can cook. They are not afraid to experiment, but it would be delusional to say they have never faltered before. If the game wants gacha players to enjoy the base, they need to change their expectations of the game, and they will not do that unless the game forces them to. If anyone is capable of squaring this circle of sticking to their guns while maintaining mass appeal, it is Hypergriff. But accessibility must not undermine identity. Arknights Endfield advertises itself as a real-time 3D RPG with strategic elements, and in China as a 3D real-time strategy RPG. Personally, I just think the gameplay should lean more into that. After the technical test, I hoped it would be slow, calculated, and stubborn, but Hypergriff made it fast, impulsive, and forgiving. That doesn't mean I think games with dodging are bad.
I have nothing against this point. I am all for trying out something new that doesn't fit the mold that was created and reinforced by the Big Four. Even though I initially wished for an action combat Arknights game, I am also interested in testing out the vision they have for Endfield. The premise alone has my interest. The base building aspect also triggers my autism. I am okay with seeing something that hasn't been done before, even if it's a slower experience, but I am worried that because of the very nature of gacha games, the end result won't be that much different from what the Big Four currently represent.
But I have seen other communities become jaded, only able to sit and watch the obliviating drift of their beloved games towards an audience that has never cared. I have watched longtime fans of Monster Hunter resent the direction of Monster Hunter Wilds, ditching the necessity of positioning, anticipation, and commitment in favor of hitting a piñata that barely fights back, removing so many of those decisions and just going straight to the outcome because gamers don't understand why that decision was there in the first place. I have watched so many Endfield alpha and beta testers openly demonstrate they have precisely zero understanding of why some features and mechanics simply wouldn't work in Endfield, only able to draw upon experiences from some combination of Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves, end of list. Openly stating they have no interest in the Arknights IP whatsoever and just want yet another iteration of the same game while consistently pretending to care about the game's success. You might have heard a quote attributed to one of the lead designers of the Civ series that gamers will optimize the fun out of a game if given the option to, even if it ruins their experience of the game. But no other subculture of video games, not a single one, will not only ask for that option before the game is even out, but openly ask for the literal backbone of the game to be removed just because they don't personally like it. Do you open Balatro and complain about deck building? You open Portal and complain about solving puzzles?
Yes, that is very much true, and that is partly the player's fault, but we also need to take into account that gacha games actively encourage players to optimize the fun out of the game. The reason why players interact with games like Death Stranding, Portal, Satisfactory, Power Wash Simulator, and many others differently from gacha games is because they sell the player a fantasy that they want to immerse themselves into. But when you bring gacha systems into the mix like time-gated progress, stamina systems, random stats on gear, that goes against the very fantasy those games are trying to sell, and it breaks immersion. If your game's main gameplay experience is telling the player to take it slow and enjoy the scenery, but they have a constant timer above their heads telling them that if they don't hurry up they're going to lose progress, then the player will naturally sacrifice their own enjoyment and fun in favor of making sure that they progress. And now, please witness this absolutely beautiful crash out.
You complain that modern games don't try anything new, then shame them for doing so while rewarding the opposite. I hate to break this to you, but you are the problem. And if you start playing Arknights Endfield and you complain about the infrastructure and the factory, the very things that make it Arknights Endfield, that applies to you. Just make everything Genshin Impact! Big game always means better game! I'm not seeing enough movement. Put more shit on the screen. More big numbers, more random colors, more stupid bullshit. What is this depth you speak of? Or if farming's the only gameplay that matters, just make my waifu look cool when I press E and Q and take my money. Look at how cool the animation is! Time to build pity! Let's go gambling! Please win? No save! Only win! What do you mean building pity isn't a thing? All my friends build pity, obviously it's a thing, you fucking idiot! What is this Factorio shit? I don't have that kind of autism. I have the kind with no self-awareness or social skills whatsoever. Wow, chat! Look! Boobs! Absolute cinema! Take all my money! What do you mean they slightly reduced Nicole's boob size? What do you mean I can't see Cantarella's camel toe anymore? This is preposterous! The Chinese Communist Party won't let me masturbate! Video game? What the fuck is one of those? Just make it easier to maintain my account so I can continue to not play the games I've built my entire personality around. Gacha games should do nothing but compete for my attention by replacing every UI element with Subway Surfers and Family Guy funny moments because my childhood cognitive development died the moment my parents decided to raise me with a fucking iPad. Sorry about the attention span, take 3 big booms to make you feel better. Don't even give me a gacha game, just give me a virtual baby playmat instead, where I can hit random objects while shitting my pants and crying about anniversary rewards. Because if I'm totally honest with myself, that's all I really want. Not a handcrafted experience by passionate game designers or a fun challenge to overcome. I just want a distraction. Something to keep me occupied so I don't accidentally start contemplating my meaningless existence on this godforsaken earth. Now just take one moment to seriously ask yourself, who is more deranged here? Me for crashing out in a YouTube video for your entertainment, or you for logging into 50 billion gacha games every fucking day that you don't even like playing, while having the audacity to demand every single one of those games respects your time when you don't even respect your own? I don't want Arknights Endfield to be filled with people who don't even want to play Arknights Endfield!
I don't know about you, but I loved every single second of this crash out. Thank you, Tobo, for this priceless gift.
Felt good to get that off my chest. That interview with Hypergriff I cited earlier from G-Cores ends with this paragraph. Innovation is no longer just a creator's aspiration for their own work. It's something the market increasingly demands. Simply improving production standards is no longer enough to satisfy today's players. So whether you want to or not, if you aim to achieve something in the current market, you must create something that is uniquely yours. On paper, this sounds great. In their own words, they want to innovate and create something unique. But we must not judge merely based on words. We should be judging actions, because actions have consequences. When scores of gacha gamers who don't want good games and just want a babysitter are all now suddenly very excited about Enfield's new direction, I find that to be kind of alarming. So I voiced a dissenting opinion. What better time to voice that criticism than while the game is still in development, when it can still make important changes? All that being said, I have cherished Arknights for this long for good reason. I look forward to finding out what they've been doing since the beta, because if they make the right decisions before release, then on my life I will become the world's #1 hypergrifter. Full turbo glaze, no brakes. I would be delighted to live in that timeline. But until then, I remain patient. When the servers open, I will be there no matter what. Ready to know life Arknights Endfield, ready to experience everything it has to offer. I just hope I will also be ready to cherish it for years to come.
This is a great video and it was a joy for me to watch it and rewatch it throughout the creation of this video. I overall agree with the points he made. I am sure that there are players out there that just play the game without actually enjoying it. But I also want to emphasize players behave this way for a reason. These habits, these expectations, they didn't appear out of thin air. They were shaped by years of design choices across the genre. So let's bring this video to a conclusion. Yes, I and many other players would like to play Arknights Endfield according to its original vision, but chances are that the type of players that Tobo critiques will still find their way into Endfield regardless of whether the dodge exists or not. Because more than likely, it's not that the players never liked the game to begin with, this is just the natural outcome of interacting with time-gating mechanics that are prevalent across all gacha games. Mark my words, people will go into this game with the best of intentions and will come out jaded after a while. Anyway, I think this video is long enough. I hope you enjoyed it. This is my very first time doing a response video, so let me know what you guys think about it. Let me know if you agree with my or Tobo's points, but also let me know if you think I could have improved this video in some way. And of course, if you have any additional points to bring up that neither I nor Tobo addressed, I'd love to check them out. Also, please leave a like and a sub if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, have a good one.